Welcome back to The Long Dark. This is the first in a redone series of guides to get you up to speed on The Long Dark. This new and improved guide replaces my original beginner's guide from several years ago, and you will also be able to find more guides in this new playlist soon if they aren't there already. Go ahead and check the description or the cards in the upper right. Without further ado, let's get right on into it. The first thing any beginner needs to know is that there are two main components or systems in the Long Dark that all interact together, and ignoring these systems will end up getting you killed. The first of these systems is your condition. Think of this as your health bar, and when it reaches 0, you die. There's a lot of things that can affect your condition, and we'll get into those shortly. But the first major tip I have about your condition is to not treat it as you do a health bar in most other games where you always keep it as full as possible. And yes, of course, in the Long Dark, you'd like to keep your health as full as possible, but don't pursue that as your ultimate goal, or you may end up in sticky situations that you can't get out of easily. Instead, try to think of your condition more so as a resource. It's there to be used, consumed, and utilized to enable you to pursue the other activities you need to do in order to keep another system filled up. And that system is your needs. But before we discuss that, let me clarify using condition as a resource. How much you do so is going to depend on the difficulty you're in. For example, Pilgrim players may never actually have to consider using their condition as a resource, whereas in Interloper it assuredly is. Because in Interloper, if you do not treat it as a resource, you will never be able to actually accomplish fulfilling your needs. So it's best not to abuse this concept outside the realm of your capability or the needs of the difficulty you're playing at. Running your condition very low for an unimportant task, for example, can leave you very vulnerable. So take care to practice moderation in this regards. As this is just a basic guide to get you up to speed on the fundamentals of the game, this video will not cover the practice of using your condition as a resource in detail, but that will be discussed in future guides, so check out the playlist for access to that. Next up, we have your needs. You have 4 primary needs: temperature, fatigue, thirst, and hunger. These are represented by symbols with a circular bar around them in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. If you let them reach 0, they'll start to drain your condition, and if you leave them at red for too long, you can also bring on other negative afflictions that will accelerate or worsen your state of health. The primary need you need to keep an eye on is your temperature. If this need reaches 0, it starts to drain your condition at a rate of 20% an hour. But if you leave it completely untreated, or at 0 for 2 consecutive hours, you will get hypothermia. The affliction of hypothermia will double your condition loss from 20% an hour to 40% an hour, and it will cause your fatigue to double its loss rate. This makes cold the single fastest killer in the game, sans an animal attack. Take care to monitor your temperature and to keep yourself as warm as possible, though there are times you will be cold for a while, and that is acceptable. The next need is your fatigue. This is how rested you are or how tired you are. Take care to keep it topped off, but it is okay to burn it throughout the day. Do not sprint everywhere unless you have to, or else you'll end up draining it before you've completed your tasks. As it drains, it will also drain your carry capacity at certain rates, dependent on your difficulty. If you let it rest at 0 for too long, it will drain your condition by 1% an hour. If necessary, you can forgo sleeping for a little bit to accomplish a necessary task, as the hit to your condition will be minimal. And the next need you have is thirst. This one's quite simple. You simply just need to drink water to keep the bar full, and you can make water by cooking at a fire in a can or pot, or from finding sources of it, like toilets and water bottles. Once this reaches 0, your condition will drop at 50% a day, or about 2% an hour. It is possible to leave this need unmet for some time if under extreme circumstances. The water is typically pretty easy to come by as long as you have fire starting materials. Your final need is hunger. This represents your calorie store, and if you let it hit 0, it will drain your condition again at 1% an hour. Therefore, it's possible to leave it at 0 for extended periods if you don't have a reliable source of food nearby. And do note that leaving it there for too long will begin to affect your fatigue, and a red section will appear there, noting a cap in how rested you can be due to your starvation. Considering all you need all your needs to be at full to regain condition, if you're low on food, instead of eating throughout the day, it's better to starve throughout the day and then only eat when you're about to go to sleep so you can regain your condition, as sleeping is when you gain the most condition back. If you keep your belly full for 72 consecutive hours, however, instead of getting a debuff, you will get a buff, the well-fed bonus, which will add 11 pounds or 5 kilos to your carry capacity. Not only that, it adds an additional 5% to your maximum condition, so it's overall a very beneficial buff to gain, though it can be difficult and tricky to maintain it depending on your experience and your difficulty level. So your takeaway from this basic overview of the Long Dark is that you have multiple needs that require different types of resources to maintain, and keeping them maintained is required to keep your condition up. This balancing act, as mentioned before, will be discussed further in another episode, but for now, that's your introduction to these systems, how they interact, and their importance. Next, we're going to discuss your first steps in the Long Dark as soon as you launch it, and how you start navigating and exploring. So, if it's your first time playing, you'll have no idea where anything is or how to really go about surviving, and that's okay. The exploration aspect of the game is one of its most compelling selling points, and my best advice to you is this. As soon as you launch in, you're not going to really have any gear or anything else like that. You're going to start out with almost nothing, and so you're going to need to find places where you can get more loot, and those will be shelters and other key locations in the map. But to find those, follow the lay of the land, where it seems like moving with the path of least resistance. And using this method, you'll often find yourself led to shelter. So, the path of least resistance could just be natural valleys if you're in a more rural kind of map, or if there's often more human structures around, you can follow roads or railroads and stuff like that. And as long as you stay out of the forests or the hills, and you follow these kind of natural or man-made paths, you will often find shelter. And the game has excellent sound design, so it's not just running around as if you're blind without knowing where anything is. You can listen for the sound of shutters, banging, and other creaking noises, as these can indicate shelter. Shelter's great for warming up, but there's another thing you'll need them for. Just starting out, as mentioned before, you'll have a random assortment of low-quality items and gear. The different shelters you come across will have a potential assortment of loot there for you to collect based on the difficulty you're playing at. For example, if you're at the lowest difficulty, Pilgrim, you can typically find everything you need to survive after a few shelters in a single region. And if you're playing Interloper, however, you're going to have to clear multiple regions to even begin to get set up. My final tip for you here as a beginner is to work on your wolf avoidance skills. As you progress in the game, lack of loot, the cold, and your own inexperience will become more manageable, and you'll form capable base level of survival skills in the game. However, if you're playing at anything above Pilgrim, wolves will probably become your one and continual Achilles heel. The reason I say anything above Pilgrim is wolves and bear do not attack you in Pilgrim unless you attack them first. Instead, they simply run away. Continually and repeatedly, I see beginners from Voyager on up struggling to manage wolves, and honestly, it can be quite daunting to attempt. So, I will have a comprehensive wolf avoidance guide video on this as well. I have an older one, but the new one will be coming out soon if it isn't already, so check the cards or description or the playlist for that. However, I will give you some simple tips just to get you started with the concepts of managing those furry little pests. And the first tip is to always take stock of your surroundings. And if you continually play in one or two regions, you are likely to learn where wolves are likely to be. Next, learn how to stealth past them. As long as you're not carrying anything smelly like raw fish and meat, or even a lot of cooked meat, you can crouch and it's pretty easy to sneak by. And third, you can use throwing stones to direct them to a particular location away from you, provided they have not yet detected you. Using this method, you can just crouch on through, throw your stones, keep them pointed away from you, and get through the area of whatever they're patrolling. This will enable you to get by unscathed. And it'll take a lot of practice to apply all of this knowledge and tips, from using your condition as a resource, to understanding your needs, to keeping them full, to understanding exploration. And this guide is designed to be spoiler light, and to just give you a basic foundation to build off of to understand the game. It's spoiler light so as not to detract from the exploration aspect of the game. The next guides in this series are going to build up off of this foundation, and each will cover a singular aspect to get you the next steps you need to take and make more complex ways of approaching the world to better improve your survival skills. As mentioned, this guide is designed to just give you a basic overview and a simple understanding of the main game systems so that you're not left scratching your head. To that end, I hope it has been very beneficial. And again, the future guides in this series will all build off of this foundation of the basic game systems and how they interact. I hope you found this guide helpful to that end. And that's it for this guide. Be sure to check out the whole playlist below and consider subscribing if you liked the video. I'll catch you guys in the next one. And as always, stay safe and stay warm out there.